Blaise really needs no introduction, but he's the director of Brother Bear, and he's worked on many of the Disney films you love, and I'll let him talk more about that. And please give a warm welcome to Aaron Blaise.
I am happy. I'm super happy to be here. How many of you guys follow my live streams? Okay, so most of you, you're basically going to see me what I normally do. One of the big things about what I do is I do the same thing over and over again. That way, I don't have to worry about process, I can worry about creativity. And so, what I'm going to show you today, if you followed me before, you've seen me do it 1,000 times, but maybe I'll drill it again and I might get home a little bit more, who knows. But we only have an hour today, so usually I have about 3 hours to do something. But so I thought today what I'd do, because I've done so much design work, I want to show you what you can do in an hour. I'm going to work fast. And so you guys can draw along with me. But the point I wanted to make in this next hour or 50 minutes or whatever it is that we have is that you can create some pretty compelling imagery character-wise, because I'm going to focus on character, animal characters if you don't mind, because that's what I like. But you can create some pretty compelling characters in an hour or less than an hour, and that's really when I'm working on a film early on, I want variety and I want a lot, and so it's really I'm down there and just scribbling out ideas, and a lot of times I want to take it to color, so I scribble it into color, and I want to show lighting, and I'll scribble in the lighting and all of that, and so that's what I want to show you today. And if you can loosen up and kind of adopt this approach. What's really cool about it is that you'll get so much more work done and you'll have a lot to pull from to figure out what it is that you want to take even further and render out more and take maybe to a much more finished image. To me, this is sort of like, it's a mix between thumbnailing and just regular rendering. It's somewhere in the middle, because thumbnailing, if you know what thumbnailing is, it's trying to find those images, those ideas in a small little composition. Well, I'm doing this larger, but I'm doing it quicker, okay? So, I want to do something that has some dramatic lighting on it. I always like to do that. And yesterday, how many of you were at my Proco demonstration yesterday? Oh, good. So this will be new to a lot of you. I did a leopard yesterday. I think today it'd be fun to do a wolf. We just had a wolf here in the building, and how many of you guys saw that? Nobody? One? Two? Oh, you guys missed it. It was awesome. But I love wolves, and I did some wolf designs for Cartoon Saloon, who is a company over in Ireland. They did Song of the Sea and Secret of the Kells, and they're doing wolf walkers now. And so early on, I got together with them, and they asked me, because I put out my wolf, how to draw wolves, coyotes, and foxes, and that tutorial. And they asked me to do some wolf designs. And so right off the bat, I'm going to know if this is something that I want, if it's too cartoony. And already, I want something that I know right now, I'm going to take that down. I'm going to start something a little different where I want him or her to have a little bit more of a downward look. And the thing I love about wolves is that shape of their snout. They've got this snout that kind of goes thin here, right there in the bridge of the nose, and that's basically where that cartilage breaks off. The nasal cavity is, and the rest of it is cartilage and skin and all that. But when I'm drawing these guys, they've got such great rhythms. I just love the rhythms to the snout, the way it works up into their cheekbones. So I'm thinking about anatomy, even though I'm doing a caricature or I'm doing when I did Nala for The Lion King, that was all about anatomy. I was thinking about anatomy throughout the entire thing. When I was doing Raja the tiger and all these other characters from Disney, I wanted to know everything I could about that character or that species before I started designing the character. So here, maybe I know the wolves. I just spent a few months ago, I was up in Montana And I spent a few days with about 25 wolves, drawing and photographing. And what's fun about this is I'm always working on, obviously, layers. I want to make sure that I can build upon, coming from a traditional background. When I first started working in Photoshop, I was thinking about single layers because that's what you have on a canvas, right? And so I really didn't think about the possibilities of what I could do. And it wasn't until I really delved into it that I realized it really opened up a whole world. And here, I'm still thinking, it's all right, it's not a bad pose, it's kind of blah. Maybe I'm going to turn that one off. And we're going to do another one. Sorry if you're following along and I keep turning it off on you. This is the nature of the game. Is I want something a little more sinister. Here's a little bit of trivia for you that I always tell people. Here's the difference between a dog and a cat. There's the top of the head. There's the snout. See how they're parallel? The forehead. Draw a little curl line there, and what do you got? You got a dog. Now, if I change this just a little bit, let me change that snout. There's the top of the head. There's the forehead. There's the snout. And that comes down like this. There's a cat. It's as simple as that. It's all in how you see those planes. Even something is like, just a little silhouette like that will tell you what that species is. So here, I want to get into a little bit of expression. Helps make the sound. Yes. And as I'm drawing, don't be afraid to blurt out questions and that sort of thing. For those of you that were at my talk this morning, you know that I like to keep it loose. So if you've got a question, just...
And actually, if you just raise your hand, I'll come around with the mic so that
Hey.
everybody can hear you. We've got a couple already. I'm going to get you all. Just hang on to your question, okay?
You have a really good sense of lighting and just like really good rendering in your painting. I was wondering how you keep the activity and the liveliness of your line work in your painting as you render it.
How do I keep the activity in the line work?
Yeah, have the kind of fluid and power of the line work while you're actually rendering over it or under it.
Yeah, you'll see as I go, I try to keep it up on top. I keep that line work on top, and then eventually, I start to draw over the top of it, and it'll eventually disappear. But I let that line work sit on top for quite a while before I change it up. If that makes sense.
And I was actually wondering, from one character designer to another, do you find yourself sometimes making the same face that your character is supposed to be making on the page, just
All the
feeling
time.
it out?
Yep. All the time. Yeah. So here's something that's kind of fun because I can let this all go into shadow back here. It's like maybe he's just sticking out part of his head coming out of the shadows right here. And this can all be in shadow. So I think I'm going to play with that a little bit. I like the silhouette.
I find the same thing, though. My sketches die when I start painting it. Yeah.
Yeah, well that's keeping it fresh. And I'll show you how I do that. And one thing I want to do is make sure every step that I do has its own job. So here, I'm trying to find the pose, I'm trying to find the drama, I'm trying to find the composition, the silhouette, all the basic, super basic stuff. I'm just basically spit all over my screens now. You want to find that the real basic things that are going to make the composition really great. Here, maybe I want to pull that out just a little bit, like that doesn't feel right.
We got another question.
So I've seen your classes online. They're really amazing. But do you also do like one-on-one mentorships or anything like that?
We're looking into it right now. I don't have the time If you guys know, if you follow me, we do a lot of travel around the world, and we do have a lot of courses that we're trying to get done that take up all of our time. We are trying to do a little bit more, at least get groups together, smaller groups, that we can do group critiques. That's what we're focusing on right now, trying to figure out a way that we can do that. Right now, I'm just, the time is just not there. But we are going to work on it. Okay, so I've got something here that I think is kind of fun, that just as a composition, I think this is going to be kind of nice. This is going to be all open. I'm going to have this all in the dark. And maybe we have something sitting back here. But as I'm doing something like this, there's all kinds of things that I'm thinking about. First of all, I'm thinking about simple shape, that sort of thing. I am thinking about anatomy underneath here. There's a skull that I want to think about. But I'm also, one thing that I talk to people about when you're sketching characters that a lot of people forget is perspective. I want to make sure that the eyes, those points on the fur, the nose, the mouth, everything are all in the same perspective, the same line. The ears, right here, you want to make sure that they're in the same perspective, because when you start losing that, it's going to start looking wonky. And this is the most fundamental step right here. We're right in the beginning. And so one way to see if it's feeling wonky, and that's a real word, wonky, is flop it. And how many of you guys do that? You guys flop your images?
All day long.
All right, all day long, because that'll tell you where it's feeling a little wonky. And like, for instance, this clump of fur right here comes back a certain distance, but this isn't feeling, when I turn it, feels like it's sitting a little too far out, like it's not sitting in the right perspective. So now I can pull it back because I'm seeing it in a different light. For those of you that don't do this, the reason I do it, and those of you that do this, you'll know that you're seeing your image in a new light. For some reason, I don't know why it is, you can just see what's wrong with it. I discovered it actually when I was a kid, when I was drawing. I couldn't get far enough away from the painting that I was doing, so I went in and put it in the mirror so I could get further away. And when I put it in the mirror, I went, oh my God, it looks like crap, And that's when I started looking at my images in the mirror, because then it causes you to see them in a different light, and you can make adjustments that way. So here, I think one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blow this up just a touch. Just a touch. Just to get a little bit more. I want to get more mass on the wolf in the composition and less negative space. Right now, they were feeling a bit even. So that feels pretty good. So it's nice and simple. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock this back. So what I'm going to do here, so now I can go in and just I'm just going to tie it down just a little bit. And with that, what I mean by tie down, I'm I want to correct some of the drawing, make it a little better, get some of the details in there that will help make him feel like a dog. Bears and dogs are distantly related, very distantly related. They broke off from each other quite a few million years ago, but there's still enough traits in bears and dogs that are similar, and one of them is the nose. If you look at a bear's nose and you look at a dog's nose, they look a lot alike. A little piece of useless trivia for you. So I'm just now, one of the things I love when I'm drawing wolves and designing wolves, I like, for whatever reason, I like that thinness towards the base of the snout and getting it flared out here. There's something about it that feels really satisfying. Here, I'm going to pull that eye. Get a little bit more. And I'm always looking at the mass of the brow, because I know I can, especially in animation, I can play with that mass right there. And there really is kind of a little bit of a mass there through fur. In reality, I can play with that mass and really get some great expression, which is what we're doing here. So I'm going to let it go from this, that flesh that goes around the corner of the lip right here, up into the flesh that connects into the cheekbone muscle, and then the rest of this, underneath that fur, that big tuft of fur, there's the jaw, the lower jaw comes through here, and comes back and connects back here. That's where it would be. And then there's all this muscle attached, and then there's fur on top of that. Another piece of trivia, when you're drawing a character like a dog, and you want to open their mouth, one thing that people do wrong a lot of times is they'll have their dog, and they'll go, bark. Like this, there's their open mouth, or let's really open it. Bark. Like that. And let me clean that up a little bit. And what's wrong with that?
That's not where the jaw rotates.
That's not where the jaw rotates. But a lot of people do that. There's our hinge right there on that one. But where is the jaw? The jaw rotates back here. You can feel it on your own head. So when you come back and you go, bark, right there, that's more like where it should rotate back there. And the skin would come down and that sort of thing. So just remember that if you're drawing a character with the mouth open. There's our wolf. So here we are, we're 17 minutes into it. We've already done 4 different versions. Until we found one that we liked, we've been able to refine it, because we're going fast. This is the thing, you want to go fast. And one of the reasons I'm able to go fast is I know the anatomy. So that's the other thing. Do your homework ahead of time. Understand that anatomy. Understand lighting. All this comes from observation, years of observation, life drawing. That's why all that stuff is so important, because it's you fill out that visual library, and you're going to be able to recall things later on. One of the things I always talk about regarding the visual library is, first of all, is drawing what you know and not what you think, right? And so one of the examples I have there is, if you take a little 5-year-old kid, you take them out, and you give them a piece of paper and a pencil, and crayons or whatever, you tell them to draw a tree. 9 times out of the 10, they're going to draw 2 parentheses, and an afro, up on top, right? And you got a tree. That's their idea of a tree with a green crayon. Now you can take that same kid, and you take them outside, then you have them observe. You have them look at a tree, and then draw what they see. Now they're not going to do a great drawing, but they're going to do something different, because they're going to base it on observation. And then every time they draw a tree after that, that observation that they did is going to seep into their thinking, and they're going to start drawing what they know because they observed it, as opposed to what they think. And so that's what drawing from life does for you. It's not necessarily doing great drawings all the time, because you're not always going to do a great drawing. But what you are going to do is your brain's going to fill up with information, and you're going to retain it forever, because you go into this hyper-aware state of mind when you're drawing and observing from life. It's a really cool phenomenon. So here we got something that's a little bit more refined. I'm going to flop it again. You guys got any questions at this point?
Just raise your hand and I'll be right around. Ooh, here we go.
So how do we attain mastery in line weight and shape of line, and what part we should draw or which we should not draw in terms of contour definition and all those stuff? Can you give some tips?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, so how to gain mastery in attaining line weight?
Oh, line weight, yeah.
And shape of the line, and I could see that you are drawing beautifully. Some lines are lengthy and curvy, and how do we know which shape we should give contour to?
Yeah. For me, a lot of times line weight has to do with where, if I'm drawing underneath, like here, I'll tend to go a little harder because it's meant representing shadow. A lot of times it does that. I don't know, it's something I do without thinking now, so it's hard to explain it. A lot of times if I'm trying to find that rhythm or that flow, I'll tend to, I try to carve it in there, I try to push it a little harder. And other times if I'm trying to find some delicate details, I tend to be a little more delicate with the line weight. And so that's basically, you'll see, like if I turn this one off, you can see there's a lot of searching in this area here. And so I kind of drew a little heavier on top of that as I was detailing it in. And a lot of times, let me get this here, there we go. A lot of times I'll draw another layer on top of this. Today I don't think we have to because I want to keep it loose. But the line weight really comes down to, for me, it's showing form, fluidity, and light and shadow. So a lot of times that dark line will represent shadow, the underside of a character, and it helps give it form. It's kind of interesting the way that works. So we got something there. I'm going to create another layer underneath, and now I want to throw in some local color. So local color, what is local color? Local color is the color of an object when it's not in shadow and it's not in light. It's just, that's the color of the object. It's a red apple. It's a green shirt. It's a yellow lemon. And then, on top of that, is when you start creating your light and shadow based on that local color. That local color is going to affect the color, the light that hits it. It will mix and it will change the color of the local color, but it's also going to change the color of the light. They're going to meet somewhere in the middle. Same with the shadow. As you go into the shadow, it'll cool off. And so in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just throwing down a color, and then, this is a digital trick, so then what I'm going to do is once I get it down to my satisfaction, I'm going to lock it. See that little checkerboard there? Lock that. And so now I can't color outside of the color that I've laid down. So now I can start having some fun, and I'm going to go, okay, I want to come over here, and let's see here. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to start pushing some of this color here. I know on the top of the nose it tends to be a little darker. We might have a little darkness coming around the eye.
Got a question for you.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned you like working in charcoal. What are your other favorite mediums to work in?
Watercolor, gouache, acrylic, oil. I love digital. I love them all. I really do, actually. And but probably, I haven't done it in a while just because I wanted to go. I've just been on a drawing kick for so long. But oil is probably one of my favorite mediums. I also love the forgiveness of like acrylic and gouache. Those are really forgiving mediums because you can go opaque and you go light over dark, dark over light. Things like watercolor, which really require some discipline because you really can't, especially if you're going traditional transparent watercolor, you can only go from light to dark and you can't go lighter after that if you're going traditional.
So I go draw at the LA Zoo about 3 or 4 times a week.
That's awesome.
But I was wondering if either in the area or online if there are any good resources for bones and muscles and stuff like that.
I don't know specifically if there are. To be honest with you, what I do is I just Google. If I'm stuck on something, especially nowadays, you can Google anything. So I Google, let's say I'm looking for a wolf scapula. Let's be really specific. You can find a wolf scapula just by Googling it. You know, if you're really specific with your search, you'll be able to find stuff. And that's really how I've done it over the last several years, you know, to really hone in on details. Beyond that, I don't really know of, I wish I had more of an answer for you, but that's really how I've done it. And just kind of bouncing off what you're talking about with going to the zoo, a lot of times people can't go to the zoo, and this is just something I've started doing in the last couple of years. I thought it was a lot of fun. You know, obviously, if you guys know that I did Brother Bear, I love drawing bears, and I love drawing, you know, big game and that sort of thing. And one of the cool things nowadays are live nature cams. I always recommend drawing animals when they're moving. So, you know, rather than looking at photographs, look at documentaries, even if it's something you can, you know, freeze frame. But watch documentaries, because you're seeing those animals move in 3 dimensions, even though it's in 2 dimensions on the screen. You get a sense of the 3 dimensions. And something that was really cool is I discovered, I was watching, it was the salmon season up in Alaska. So the bears were congregating, and someone sent me a link to these videos that they had set up at the salmon run, where these bears were jumping in the water and catching fish, and it was beautiful footage. And so I sat there at my computer screen and drew bears all day from life, and they were up in Alaska, and I was in Florida. And so there's a lot of, that's just going off of your zoo, you know, things. I love drawing at the zoo as well, but sometimes you can't do it. And the other thing, you know, I'm going to Africa next month, but not everyone can do that, you know. And so, you know, there's a African webcam that I go to. Actually, National Geographic has a live stream that they do every day that I watch, and they get into the, you know, the wildlife there in the Masai Mara and all that. It's really cool. And anyway, that's just ranting.
An eagle-eyed scout has noticed that your lock transparency actually got turned off. So
My what?
the lock transparency on your layer
Oh,
actually
yeah, it did.
Okay, cool. Just checking in. We got a question.
Thank you.
Okay, you brought up that bears and wolves basically are very distantly related. At one point, were like, you know, they were very closely related.
Yeah.
So does that tie into the fact that Denahi and Kenai are brothers as bear and wolf respectively?
You know, that's the first time I've ever thought of that. You just brought up, where are you? Oh yeah, I've never even thought of that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's not the reason, because I didn't even think of that. But that's cool.
Got another question coming up for you, and I did want you to know that there are a lot of really awesome wolves out here in the crowd.
Oh, that's awesome. That makes me happy.
So here comes your question.
I'm cleaning up some of them. Just real quick, I'm cleaning up some of this underdrawing now. So I'm getting to a point where I want to clean that up. Go ahead.
So the local color that you used was very light. When you were explaining it, it was like, think of a lemon, you know, like whatever that. Why is it so? Why did you start with it so light, though?
Just because, well, first of all, that was just a base coat. That wasn't the local color. This is, what I'm getting to now is the local color. So I just started light just because a lot of the wolf has got light fur. That's the only reason. So you can see I'm laying in some of the darker fur and all that. This is still local color. I'm still on the local color kick right now. And so, and that's the reason I locked it before, boop, because then I can go, and it won't go outside the lines. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. There we go. I locked the wrong layer. There we go, right there. And so what I like to do at this stage is just get a lot of variation in the color. You know, just like, you know, if you look at our own skin, we're not all the same tone skin. We've got all kinds of variations. And so that's what I try to do with animals with fur.
I have a question, like, are you using any reference for this picture, or you are drawing it from memory?
I'm doing this from memory.
So do you memorize the anatomy of the animals, or how do you practice it?
I memorized the anatomy, yeah. So, I mean, it was a lot of practice drawing from life, drawing from books, drawing from whatever I could find. And then over time, I've just taught myself to, you know, with all the characters that I've designed and studied and all that sort of thing, I can do it from memory now. But it just takes time. And anybody can do this, it just takes time. So now we've got basically our local color in here. We're still pretty rough, and but I want to start putting in some shadow. And the other thing I want to do right now is maybe put a little bit of darkness in the background, or put a background color. So I'm going to put a layer here. I'm going to pull this over here. And this is all generally pretty warm, our character. So I'm going to go kind of cool and dark, you know, in that background. But it's still kind of gray as well.
We got a question for you.
Yeah.
Hey Aaron, how do the fur pads on the sides of the head behave whenever the wolf opens his mouth?
When it opens his mouth, the fur pads actually don't change a whole lot. They're going to stretch a little bit, but it's mainly down in here. Out here, on the sides, there's not a ton of change. So I'm just getting, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this body into shadow, and I want the front of that head to be just coming out of shadow, and I want it to be really dramatic. So I want the most contrast to be where that's going to be our center of interest. And so that, I'm just going to play with that a little bit. Let me do this. I don't know if you can see. Can you see that? Oh, you can. That's good. That's good color. So you can see that subtle change that I'm putting in here. I'm just playing a little bit with that blue. Maybe going a little brighter with it up here as we go into the night sky. And knock that opacity back a little bit.
Lots of really beautiful wolves.
Awesome. I like hearing that. So now I want to start, once again, I'm staying very loose. I'm going to throw a layer on top, right here, layer 6. Get in the habit of labeling your layers. So this is going to be shadows. I'm going to set the blend mode to that layer on multiply. So now I can go in and grab a somewhat cool, I'm going to go into the gray area, somewhat cool color, and I am going to put this into shadow. And I'm going to keep it very basic. So like I said, I wanted it to feel like he's just stepping out of the shadows. So I'm going to have it here. Oops, let me knock this back up. And then this side of the muzzle is going to be in shadow, because I want that light to be off to the right. And I'm just going to see real quick what that's going to feel like. You can see right away it creates some drama. Or as my Canadian co-director would say, drama.
So I was wondering, since you've traveled to a lot of different places, what were some of the best projects you've worked on?
Some of the best projects I've worked on weren't necessarily projects that I've traveled to, and there's projects that some of my favorite projects that never saw the light of day. Like there's a movie called The Legend of Tembo that I was working on after I left Disney. That was probably my favorite project I've ever worked on. But right in the middle of making the movie, the company went bankrupt and I was never able to finish the movie. But for that, I went to Kenya, and I went to, oh shoot, I was on the wrong layer for that. I went to Kenya, and, it's because it's locked, there we go. We went to Kenya, India, Thailand, Nepal. It was amazing. And now you can see, just by doing that one shadow layer, look how much the drama jumped. It's really cool. This is what I love about Photoshop. You can really push that drama and get something really cool really quickly. There we go. Let me jump up here. And that's what I love about Multiply, because it really works great in trying and getting shadows, as long as you're working in the right tone, like so. I might go a little darker in a few areas. And maybe we want to make it a little bit kind of ghost-like. What if we get a little glow in the eyes? I don't know, that's kind of cool. Do you like that or no? Yeah? Cool. Me too. So now we've got that. So look how basic now we're, what, 30 minutes into it, and we've got kind of a cool little drawing. I'm going to create a layer on top. I'm going to go overlay, and I'm going to grab a warm color, a little, not too lemony. When I start getting into these colors here, it starts getting really acidic. I like warmth and more in the kind of cad yellow area.
Got another question?
Yeah.
Other than, I assume, humans, what were some of the creatures that were most challenging for you to learn to draw?
You know what? Humans, surprisingly, humans weren't too bad for me. I like drawing humans. I did a lot of figure drawing when I was in college. I just prefer not to draw humans. You know what was really hard to learn from an animal standpoint were elephants. There's a lot of anatomy on an elephant, and it was interesting.
How did you eventually learn to draw them so well?
Drawing them a lot. Looking at them, I drew them from life. Exactly the way a baseball player in the NBA or learns how to play great baseball. They get in there and they play it a lot. Or someone playing basketball in the NBA, they want to learn. They play a lot of basketball. So I just drew a lot of elephants. Both, because we had both in the movie. Yeah. So now I've got a basic light and dark shadow. And at this stage you can kind of experiment with it if you want, but I kind of like where it's at now. And so one thing that I can do now is I can create another light source if I want off to the side, and I think I might do that. So I'm going to go and create a new layer, and I'm just going to keep that normal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go a little bit cool with it. And, okay, that's where it is. I'm going to go a little bit cool with it and a little brighter than where it is. Let's see, up here. And I'm just going to slowly, this is just kind of an experiment because I usually do this as a rim light, but I want to see what's going to happen if I kind of light this character from here. So I'm thinking about what parts of this muzzle are going to pick up this light coming off, reflected light coming off from the side. I know I'm going to get a lot in here. And once again, I'm just keeping it really loose. But I'm thinking about real lighting situations. This might be some moonlight off to the side. At this stage, I might be picking up some fur texture.
Got a question for you.
Yeah?
What kind of exercises can you recommend to get better with draftsmanship?
I get lots of questions about what kind of exercises do you recommend to be better at this or be better at that. The only answer to any of that, and it's not a magic answer, it's just doing it. And so to be a better draftsman, I don't care if you're drawing people, animals, buildings, dirt, I don't care what it is, just draw it and do it a lot. And over time you get better. And that's the best answer I can give you because that's really the only way you're going to do it. I mean, there are certain things, if you want to, well, actually, no, I take that back. It's just really the act of drawing is what's going to make you better. Here, I'm getting a little bit bright. I want to go a little, not quite, look how dark it is on this color wheel, and yet it still shows up really brightly up here. Getting a little bit too bright on that fur. I want to pull back on that a little bit. Maybe a little brighter. There we go. I can keep it really loose.
Got another one?
Yeah.
Do you ever see your style copied? And
Say that again?
Do you ever see your style copied, and how do you react to that?
You know what? It wasn't until I started doing what I'm doing as a business that I've started to see my style copied, and I think that's awesome. It gives me a big head. You know, some people like, doesn't that make you mad? And I was like, no, man, that's an honor. You know, people are, and one of the things I tell people, as far as if you want to break out of a rut, if you feel like you've been doing the same thing over and over, copy somebody else's painting. Someone that you admire, copy someone else's painting, and you're going to learn, you're going to see things differently, you're going to learn, you know, it's not necessarily trying to steal their style, you just want to see the world in a different way and portray it in a different way, and you pick up things that way. You know, one of the things we had to do in college when we were learning drawing and painting and everything else was we had to copy the old masters. And by the idea behind that was to learn their approach.
Best form of flattery.
Yeah, it is. It really is the best form of flattery. You're absolutely right.
Another question for you?
This is more of a personal question. Is it true that your brother is legendary Travis Blaise?
It's absolutely true.
Also a great animator.
Yes, he is. A great storyboard artist. So I'm going in with another multiply layer and just a little bit darker and just defining, you know, at this stage I like to jump back and forth between light and dark. So places like this where the leg is sitting in the background, it's not going to catch some of the light. I'm going to push that back a little bit.
Got another for you?
Maybe back in here. Yes, where are you?
Hey, have you ever gotten like too far into a painting and then realized that you did something wrong early on?
Yeah. Oh, you asking me if I've ever done that?
Yeah, and then like how did you deal with it?
No, I never do that, man. I'm awesome. No, of course I do that. You know, you either throw it out or you suck it up and go back and, you know, you have to go back and fix it where it went wrong. And depending on how strong the idea is, will determine whether or not I decide to go back. And, you know, so that's that. It just, you know, it doesn't happen as often anymore because I really plan my imagery quite a bit. And even if I'm approaching something like this, I'm approaching it so loosely and step by step that it kind of takes care of itself. So one thing I'm doing right now, I'm looking at this, I want this to really go into shadow. So I want to drop that size back, just really kind of push this a little bit.
Got a question?
There we go, that feels kind of cool.
Hey, Aaron, you just mentioned planning. Like, how much time do you usually invest in that before you approach a drawing or a painting?
It depends on the image. So, if I know I'm going to be doing something that's going to require a lot of time and rendering, then I'll really plan it a lot. Oftentimes, you know, I have a very short attention span. I don't like to spend any more than a couple hours on a piece. So especially if I'm digitally painting, and so I'll sit down and I'll just dive in and try to find the image while I'm doing it. But if I have an idea, then I'll spend quite a bit of time thumbnailing and finding the composition, you know, that sort of thing. But it does jump around quite a bit. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just start rendering just a little bit where I want the attention to be, which is in the face over here. And so one thing I'm going to do is that you're going to see the drawing start to fade away. So if I turn that drawing off, you can see there's a wolf there, but that drawing really holds it together. So I'm going to turn that back on, but what I want to do is I want to fade it off. Whoops, not that one. This one. There we go, right there. Whew. Okay, so I'm going to fade that back just a little bit. So what that does is it tells me where I need to go and dig in deeper with my darks, but I'm also going to jump in with some highlights. So now I'm going to create, once again, another layer, set that to multiply, but I'm going to go dark with it. And I'm going to go kind of cool, pretty dark, there we go. And I want to draw, like around the eye, you know, wolves have this, almost looks like mascara around their eyes. It's really cool. Gives them a really cool look. I want to hit those nice, deep darks. And then once I get that established, then I can go in and I can start finding some of my lighter lights. So here on the nose, I'm going to come in and reestablish that. You see how loose I'm keeping this. There we go. So as I'm doing that, just a little bit, you can see how far hitting it just a little bit of darkness, it really carries it. Keeping this very simple. Same thing over here. There we go. There we go. My catchphrase. So, now that I've got that established, I can go in and I'm going to create another layer on top. And now I'm starting to work my opaques. So now I want to find some of the brighter highlights that are going to get it to pop a little bit. So what I do is I'll usually grab, I'll use my ink dropper and I'll grab what's there. And then I'll go a little warmer and a little brighter. And right along that edge, right over the drawing, start to establish where some of that form should catch a little bit more light. Keeping it simple.
Is that another question?
Yeah.
Aaron, have you ever voice acted for animated stuff you've worked on?
I've done scratch recording. So I used to do a lot of the scratch recording for our movies. Scratch recording, for those of you that don't know, is a temporary recording until we get the actors in. So when we're in storyboard form, we'll shoot the whole movie in storyboard form and record it and have all the acting, sound effects, temporary music, everything. And so I did a lot of that for that, and I loved it. It's so much fun. You just kind of lose yourself in the acting. So you can see, now I'm starting to model that. I don't want to go too crazy with it, but I do want to hit just a couple, just a little touch here and there. As you go brighter, as you go darker, you need less and less. So you can see it's just nice and subtle. But on that snout, I want that warm light. I'm going to go right up into this kind of turquoisey color. Catch a little bit of light. Right along here.
It feels like you're choosing your colors instinctively. Do you have a method here?
I'm thinking about warmth, and I really think about warm and cool. So here, and I'm thinking about local color. So if there's a local color, I'm thinking about the warmth of the light, and how is that warm light going to interact with that local color. So in this case, I've got a warm light that's interacting with the cool local color of the nose, and so it's going to create kind of this turquoise kind of light on there. But then as I go brighter, I can go more warm and get brighter here. I'm not quite in white yet. And really get a nice little wet nose there. But another area, sort of like down here, if you look down here, I'm going to go cooler because it's not in direct light, but I want to go bright because it's catching a little bit of different light on that nose. We blow this up. You can see, just subtly, oops, there we go. I can catch a little bit of that nostril. It's subtle. I don't know if that looks a little dark for you guys. Can we turn the lights down just a little bit more?
Yeah, we can turn the lights down. There's one more button down there for the lights. Can we hit that? And then we've got another question.
I want to make sure that you're seeing that.
The other way.
Brighter's better. That's good. Okay. No, I'm kidding.
Do you have a favorite Photoshop brush that you like to use?
The one I'm using. It's one that I made, and I've used it for the last 5 years, and I always use it. It feels like a nice piece of chalk, and it's really super versatile. So that's what I use all the time.
Here.
Okay, so now, and right now I'm really in the finishing kind of stages of this. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm really trying to define these last little bits of detail. I want this sucker to really be in shadow again. So and I do this a lot. I'm going to go to multiply again, and I'm going to push it back into shadow even more. Just so we have a nice big graphic shape back here. That's what I'm looking for. Let me go to my other brush, it works a little better. I got 10 minutes.
Hang on,
Yep.
I'll be right.
That's exactly what I'm going to do next. You beat me to it.
One more time for the rest of the room.
The question was, do I ever
dodge and
use...
burn?
Yeah, dodge and burn. Do I ever use dodge and burn? And I'm going to do color dodge. You notice how also I've got a lot of warm orange and yellow, and in the shadows I'm putting in these violet colors. Keeping it loose, keeping it loose.
We got one more question.
Let her rip.
As we were talking about different modes, do you ever use darken? Because I've noticed that a lot of people use darken instead of multiply for shadows.
Do I ever use what? I'm sorry.
Darken mode.
Oh, darken. No, I don't. And I'm sure it works just as well. It's just I'm a creature of habit, and I found that multiply works great, so that's all I ever use. I don't really experiment a lot. I find what works, and then I stick with it because then I'm not having to really, figure it out again. So now I'm going to throw another layer on top of that, and I'm going to set that to multiply because I want to experiment with something. And I'm going to go a little darker, and I'm going to go over to my gradient tool and just drag this over, and it's going to feel like he's coming out of the shadows. Ooh, scary. Okay, and then let's go into our dodge, color dodge. Well, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, and we're going to go up and we're going to grab that, so we're going to put it into a folder. I'm going to copy that folder, and that way now I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to merge that group. So now I've got everything on one layer. But if I want to go back, I've still got my other layers there. So I'm going to turn that off. I don't need that on. And I'm going to come in. I just really quickly, I want to create one more layer. I just want a little bit more brightness on that muzzle. I'm going to do this in just a couple minutes. And I want to get just a little bit of little detail, little fur.
Yeah, we got just about 5 minutes left for Aaron here. So if you've got questions, please give them to him and raise your hand high.
Now you'll find, little things like that. That little line, that little tiny line really helps round out that muzzle.
Here we go.
Little details. Go ahead.
How many hours a day do you paint and draw?
7 or 8 a day. Not on the weekends. My weekends are for partying. No, I treat it very much like a job. Otherwise, I get burned out. I do love what I do, but there's you can get burned out. But real quick, I think I went a little heavy with that.
Anyone else? I don't want you to be disappointed because I'm supposed to lock up this room right at 6, so I got to...
Okay, hold on. One more thing
No.
I'm just going to do.
You're okay, Aaron. I'm talking to the crowd because I don't want them to not get their questions in.
So the one thing I want to show you now, I'm going to grab an airbrush tool, right here, brush. I'm going to knock my opacity way down to like 9%. And I'm going to change my blend mode on my brush to color dodge. And I'm going to grab a really warm color and bright.
Here we go.
And
Okay.
yes, go ahead.
So if you are teaching yourself and you're practicing art every day, but you're not sure if you're getting better because you're not getting any feedback, what should you be doing maybe at that point if you have to keep doing self-taught art?
You want feedback and you don't have any.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you can get feedback. You just have to find it. I'm sure you have friends that are artists. If you don't, you have somebody that you can talk to. Let's get those eyes glowing. Let's go demon dog. The key is you really want to find somebody that is going to be honest with you. And if you don't have that, then really the only thing you can do is just continue to do what you're doing and really be honest with yourself and scrutinize it and make sure that you're not doing the same habit and the same, or bad habits, over and over again.
Got another one for you over here. Thank you, sir.
This isn't as much of a question, but just in your digital painting tutorial, you go over customizing brushes, and that really made a big difference for me in digital painting and be able, knowing that you can make your own brushes instead of having to download other people's. And just thank you for having that part in there.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad it helped, because it certainly helped me a lot. And so now, just to give it a little painterly quality, and it's all in one layer, I can come in. I'm just going to kind of clean up some of this dirty line work. Dirty line work. And I like losing edges a little bit too, so I'll come in and kind of lose those edges a little. Oops.
Another one here.
How do you pace yourself for personal projects like Snow Bear? Because I noticed you've been working on that for a while.
A long time. I've got too many irons in the fire, just like anybody else. And I've been working on Snow Bear for 2 years, and I should have had it done a year ago. So it's just one of those things. You just gotta, you jump around and you try to get done what you can get done, and you try to, just maintain a balance. That's the biggest thing, is maintaining balance. And hopefully you get it done. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just, a lot of times you'll get overwhelmed, like I do, and I do. And you just got to step back and go, okay, now I got to prioritize, and that's really what it comes down to, is prioritizing.
It's tricky for everybody. Another
It really
question.
is.
What would you say the key is for mixing your cartoon styles with the realism?
Eyes. That's the key.
All about
Eyes. Eyes and expression. If you can create an expression, and let me give you a quick before we go. One. But anyway, this is there's our. Let me tap that. There we go. So what's really cool about something like this is that you can create. It's like keep your values and tight, and keep make your values really varied where you want your attention to go to, and you can create some really cool drama like we've done here. There's not a lot going on here, and actually it looks completely black up on the screen, but up on my screen you can see fur texture and everything in that darkness. But even in that, having that dark silhouette and having that wolf kind of coming out of the shadow like that, we've created kind of a fun, dramatic piece, and we've done it in less than an hour.
Less than an hour.
So that's kind of fun.
It's amazing. And I've got bigger on.
But really, like in 30 seconds, I just want to go back to that other question really quick.
Yeah. We do have one more question. So
this is keep your expressions like this. And you guys have taken my character design course, you've heard me say this. What's that?
Smiley face.
Put that expression in your character. Keep it that simple, really. You have a lot of, I know you might have a lot of anatomy, but if you can keep it that simple, clarity is gonna, you're gonna get clarity out of that. It's just like that. Those are simple expressions, but this is Mark Henn, who animated Jasmine and Belle and all these great iconic characters for Disney. He and I worked together on almost every Disney film back in the 90s. And I remember I was struggling on some expression. I was a young animator, and he gave me this lecture. He said, do this. Draw that face over your character, and then just put the features over that. Keep them that simple, and you're going to get simple, clear expression. And if you can apply that to your realistic animals, you'll end up with characters like we were just talking about for that question, which is, how do you get expression and soul into characters that are realistic? And that's what it is. It's the eyes and simple expression.
It's great advice. I've got one more question before we go.
Sure.
Speaking of eyes, your comment on the eyes, especially on the Lion King animated characters,
comparing to the live action in Lion King?
Oh yeah. What's my opinion? Is that what I'm not sure what the question is?
Just a question.
Yeah. Well, I love. First of all, I love the new Lion King. So there's a lot of people I know that don't like it. I thought it was great. I loved what they were trying to do. But I did miss the expressiveness. I do have to admit, I missed the expressiveness that we were able to get because we were doing much more pushed characters. How they would have gotten around it, I don't know. It would have been a different film. But I did like the movie quite a bit. So, there you go.
And with that, my friends, please give a thank you to Aaron Blaise.